Okay, let's start the show.
For Thursday, September 6th, 2018. Welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com. Hello and welcome to this sunny, foggy, I can't even tell because we're indoors afternoon post Labor Day. We're in the fall now. And
Are we?
aren't we? Is this still the summer? I don't know.
Yeah, Kishore says this is summer.
I'm just preparing for my brain to be mush in 2 months. So in the slow decline. If you listen to the podcast over the next 8 weeks, or listen to the podcast over the next 8 weeks, you'll slowly see my cognitive abilities deteriorate.
Oh,
as
wow.
I get closer to
People can see that
baby.
every week on this podcast to me.
Oh, just over the span of the 2
span
hours.
of the podcast.
When-
Cognitive failings.
Oh, at the beginning you're sharp, and at the end you're dull. Is that what you're saying?
Sure.
It's an inverse relationship between number of Coke cans, Diet Coke cans, to the left of you as well. Yeah. Hey, Kishore. Hey, Jeremy. How you doing?
Hey, well,
I'm so tired.
So tired because we're going to start off by talking about your adventures at Dragon Con. Not PAX. PAX also this past weekend. Crunchyroll Expo also this past weekend. We were neither of those, but you were at Dragon Con in Atlanta.
Yeah,
Welcome back.
You remember Star Trek Generations?
Yes.
Dragon Con is like the nexus for me. Like I almost didn't make it out.
Yeah,
Ooh,
I
a
don't-
singularity of space and time.
I don't remember what the Nexus is. What does that mean?
Nexus is a ribbon in space. It travels through space, can be affected by gravitational fields and gravitational waves much like the supernova of a star. And inside the Nexus, time and space have no meaning. When you're in the Nexus, you can jump to any part of space and time outside of the Nexus, and people that exist in the Nexus can all live perfect, blissful lives.
He's reading the Wikipedia entry from inside his own brain.
See, he's peaking right now, and over the next 4 months, it's just downhill.
Down now, yeah. Star Trek Generations.
I love Dragon Con. I think it's my favorite con of the year by far. It's just there's so many incredible cosplays that you just don't see at that density anywhere else. And there were so many just real random, bizarre ones, like Mr. Parker's Neighborhood, which was a Spider-Man Mr. Rogers mashup.
Wow.
Which was incredible. And there was a Lucy and Ethel from I Love Lucy,
saw you
that
post
famous
that.
scene
The
of them
chocolate.
eating chocolate.
At the conveyor belt.
I saw a delightful video clip of about 30 inflatable dinosaurs
Yes.
dancing in a hall.
I
And
love
that
that.
happened multiple times.
I feel like that's
many,
like
many times.
one of those it had to happen this year. This was the right year for it. The costumes became widely available. DragCon's a perfect place where everyone's gonna have that idea to put them in their bag, and it doesn't take a lot of space. and
Yeah,
flavors.
Hilton actually themed out to be Jurassic World themed.
Was sponsored.
No.
Okay,
It
just-
was like
just for fun.
It was just for fun. There was just kind of like it was Hilton World, and so there was a ton of dinosaur type content around.
The closest I got to Dragon Con was I watched the movie Blockers. Also,
I don't know
the
that
Clock
movie.
Blockers. It's a Leslie Mann, John Cena movie about parents being overprotective of their children.
Oh.
And
Sounds
on
terrible.
prom night, and the party. I guess the movie was supposed to be set in on the East Coast, but they filmed it in Atlanta. And one of the big scenes in the movie was in the Hilton Hotel, and I'm like, "That's Dragon Con. That's the elevator. Those are the rooms." But it wasn't Dragon Con. So I saw someone who had built a full power loader, Ripley in a power loader. Did you see that?
I did see the power loader.
Like
There were-
a mechanical power
Like a
loader?
foam, like a
it was
giant foam
It
power
looked
loader
like
you
but
actually
it
wore.
was
And
it was moving a little bit, so I couldn't tell if that was the person moving it, if there was any mechanics in it.
Wow.
There was if you remember the Family Guy where Stewie gets in like a power loader type
Yes.
thing, that was out. That I thought that was pretty amazing. There were 2 Soundwaves Transformers. One of the Soundwaves had the Guardians of the Galaxy tape inside. which I thought
Nice.
was beautiful.
Oh, Volume 1 mixtape? That's
yeah,
awesome.
Volume 1 mixtape.
Was it a classic Soundwave, like old school Generation 1?
One was Generation 1. One was sort of like closer to Generation 2.
Okay.
But it was sort of, did their own way.
Love it.
The best costume, just I think in terms of craft that I saw, was from Beverly from Down in Cosplay Studios up in Portland. She did a wasp.
Yes. Oh,
and
my gosh.
it was...
And Corky Creations did the helmet for it. The photo shoots look amazing. It looked like right out of the movie.
Yeah, this is for a series called Mar-Vell Becoming, where they have a cosplayer actually go through the process of building this out. What was amazing about this wasp costume, and like the detail on the suit was incredible. So it was, beautifully crafted, form-fitting. The helmet was beautiful, as you said. But it's really the wings that made this shine. They were acrylic wings, motorized, so they would actually, sort of spread out. And the way they got sort of the pattern on the acrylic wings, there was a mix of a paint job to create the sort of frosted effect that created that kind of honeycomb line on it. And there was it looked like there was some etching on it. I don't know if that was a paint job, but it was so incredibly gorgeous. It was just stunning. I didn't know what else to say. I met her. She was super nice. And her husband is a photographer who often does cosplay photography there. So in terms of high-end cosplay, that was my favorite thing that I saw.
And also the opportunities for people to take great photos, because there's interesting architecture both in and outside of the hotels. There were, of course, the meetups. You participated in meetups?
Yeah, I had my first dangerous moment in cosplay. So I was part of the Fast Food Avengers, and 4 of us were there this past weekend. McThor, Wendy's Widow, Captain Sanders, and me debuting Marvel McCheese. And Atlanta was about 90 degrees and humid, and we had a photo shoot outside. And I'm wearing this kind of like pleathery Captain Marvel outfit along with the Mayor McCheese head. And after the photo shoot, I'm going back to the hotel, and I'm like across the street from the hotel, and I almost pass out.
Ooh, a true cosplay experience.
I'm like leaning against a pole. The world is starting to get a little dizzy for me. I managed to sort of like recover and get in. I was sort of shedding layers as I was going. Mm-hmm. I was wearing my tested shirt. And when I get into the hotel, like I rang out like a cup of water out of the shirt. Wow. It was actually downright scary.
A lot of cosplayers, they wear something underneath in order to keep them cool, right?
Yeah, I didn't use active cooling here, and I think that's going to have to be a feature. I mean, it was 90 and humid. I was outside in this thing. Most of the cosplayers are constantly indoors during this entire con. So that was a little scary, but I did get back into Mayor McCheese under normal clothing the next night and went out and handed out, another 100 free cheeseburgers to the masses.
How did you have them delivered?
Well, we worked on it. There was a system in play.
Were people waiting like midnight and like, oh, the mayor's here?
I was
cheeseburgers.
I was at
pickles. Gross.
I was at a podcast recording and throwing them at people, and then I wandered into the Marriott and kept handing them out.
It's hilarious.
From the PA, would the Dragon Con attendee throwing wrappers on the ground please refrain from handing out food?
You make a joke, but I walked into the Hilton as Mayor McCheese, and the DJ stopped the music and goes, "Mayor McCheese is here with his cheeseburgers."
Wow.
Out on the dance floor. So
at 12 a.m.
No, it was like 8:30.
Okay.
Were they all cheeseburgers?
Yes.
Yeah. Ooh, you spent the extra money.
How dare you, sir?
Wow. Slice of cheese is not cheap.
That was inconscionable what you just said.
Do they give you a deal when you get 100 cheeseburgers?
They probably make them. There's diminishing returns in terms of the quality. If you gotta make so many so quickly.
Yeah, I figured it comes out.
Or are they all better because of it? I will say a couple of their highlights. There was. It seemed like there's actually less people at Dragon Con this year, partially because there isn't the fine. Partially because there weren't really big announcements and a lot of big celebrities there. But I did get to be on a panel with the cast of The Expanse to talk about the science with Kyle Hill from Nerdist. That was amazing. Shohreh Aghdashloo, who's on the show, has the best voice in all of
course.
Hollywood.
Booze.
Is just delightful. She was just, like a sprite. She is a troublemaker behind the scenes.
Oh.
I love her.
Are they like taking that mantle of like the troublemakers, like the cast of Battlestar Galactica being troublemakers?
No, it was
Dragon
only
Con?
her.
Oh, okay.
Everyone else was kind of like down to earth, and she was like going nuts. She was like surfing equipment behind the stage while we're waiting to get announced. She was hilarious. They're doing a lot of heavy lifting of keeping sort of the momentum going right now because they're in this tweener stage between the sci-fi to Amazon transition. So I applaud them, especially Cass, who's doing so much work in terms of keeping the fan campaign alive. And then I was on a ton of science panels per usual. Thanks to everyone that came to Does It Fart and Let's Give a Nobel Prize to Fictional People and all the others. Ton of Tested fans came. I tried to say hi to everyone I could. If I missed you on an escalator or something, I'm sorry. But it was so good to see so many Tested fans out and about. And I actually got to, I was doing some hands-on science. And one of our Tested members, I got to teach some science to a kid. And that brings me to my last favorite moment. My wife actually
I was
went
about to
with
say,
me
the most
this time.
important thing is, how did your wife enjoy Dragon Con?
Oh, she loved it.
Was
She-
it her first?
It was her first time. She did a lot of stuff. My wife is an ex-puppeteer, and she did some stuff on on the puppet track. And then we went as a BoJack Horseman, and she was a Princess Carolyn from that show, and just had a grand old time. We had a blast. I will say my favorite thing that I saw all weekend was a ballerina who was like a music box ballerina. So she had a gear behind her
that's
that
cool.
was spinning, and she was doing toe dancing.
I love that.
And
That's
and
great.
brought a little girl saw her and was interested, and she taught the little girl a couple dance moves, and they danced together on the floor of the Marriott. That is why Dragon Con is so magical.
That's delightful. My mom is a ballet teacher. So did you know that there is a website called doesitfart.com?
Oh yeah, I am aware.
You did know about that? And it's like accurate. You type in cow, yes. Human, yes. Although I typed in Kishore and it said maybe.
Well,
Maybe.
give me a couple minutes.
Okay. All right. Oh, that's just a brief recap, it sounds like, of the expansive experience you had at Dragon Con. Thanks for repping Tested, and I gotta go back. I really want to go back. How was it? Hot? Was it blistering hot outside?
It
in
was
Atlanta?
90 and humid, but I never spend that much time outside. I'm always in panels or wandering the hotels in cosplay. A friend of mine was at David S. Pumpkins that with his two B-boys from the SNL skit, and they were on the 10th floor elevators. Anytime the elevator opened, they would start playing the music and doing the dance.
That's commitment.
It was a great bit. So you got to come back just for the insanity. And so many people were asking about everyone from Tested. Oh, I forgot to mention Bill Duran was there.
Of course.
From Tested. He did a Prop Tart meetup from his group at Punished Props. And so there was a ton of amazing stuff that people had built using either inspired by Bill's videos or plans that he had sort of put out into the world.
That's awesome.
And we talked a little bit about that Blade Runner blaster build, which is just an amazing 10-minute video. If you haven't watched that on punishedprops.com.
Was Dragon Con originally more of a dragon-centric kind of convention, or was it always just cosplay?
Fantasy and fiction fan clubs.
Okay.
Yeah, sci-fi fantasy.
Got it.
Always. I really wish I could have went. Instead, I took a road trip this past weekend.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna recap the weekend, the Labor Day weekend.
Not in your car?
No, not in my car, thankfully. I did not get to drive. I got to be a passenger in the rear seats of a Tesla Model X.
How's that feel?
Amazing. It was like being in a Star Trek Enterprise D shuttlecraft for 8 hours, 10 hours. Our friend purchased a Model X, received it, picked it up last Wednesday, and then we drove down like the next day after and drove however many miles it is from San Francisco to Las Vegas. And we used the system. So what I didn't realize is when you map out your route, you can map it out on in the car, of course, or you can map it out on their website, and they will plan a route for you based on the stops,
The supercharger
the
network.
supercharger stops.
Yeah.
and he had the 75 kilowatt hour, so the entry level, which I believe is 225 miles maxed out. And we got to Vegas with 4 stops, and each stop was extremely pleasant.
How long were they?
We did about 30 the range because we had like brunch. We left at 6:30 in the morning. So the first stop we did at between 101 and I-5 at the 152 freeway, Casa de Fruta. Got nice diner brunch there. Fantastic food. Stayed there for about 45 minutes. Got full charge.
Full charge.
And then jumped in the car. And then next stop was Kettleman City, which is the big lounge supercharger. I think they have like 40 or something spots there for charging. And it was very much like a airport lounge. You know, it was like by the time you get there, it's like 95, 100 degrees. So the car's AC'd sitting in the back, because the X is interesting because the front has that giant window, right? That goes like the panoramic roof window is in the front, unlike the Model 3, where it's more like in the back. But sitting in the back, there's still windows above you that are in the doors, the gull-wing doors, have windows to the side of you, like your standard windows, and also a window above you. So those little window ports, it really felt like being on a shuttlecraft or a runabout from Star Trek.
On a runabout.
And then when we parked and the doors open, you press the button and then the sides open.
Yeah.
It's like stepping off into another planet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So test the air quality first, see if it's oxygen.
Yeah. Well, we checked
Yes,
outside. We checked the temperature outside.
You got to do Galaxy Quest. You got to go. You got to sniff for it, like Tony Shalhoub did.
So what I saw some pictures shared on Twitter, and it looked like the actual Tesla lounges were kind of 2001, very, very sparse.
So that was the Kettleman City one. That was the only place that had a lounge. The other places were just in parking lots next to other restaurants.
What are those lounges like? I mean, I saw they were.
It's like a fancy. There was a barista there.
Like, is it free coffee?
Not free coffee.
Oh.
They do have cold brew on tap. So you could buy cold brew. You can make hot coffee. It's not too expensive, like $4 for coffee. Very standard prices. Vending machines, Wi-Fi, very clean bathrooms.
Was it as empty as it looked?
It was empty. Like, maybe 8 people moved in and out. We talked to the barista, and you can also buy merch there. They'll sell you hats and T-shirts and tiny car models. And there's a little play area for kids. Like a wall play area. But they said the most packed it's been was on a holiday weekend a couple months ago, and they anticipate Thanksgiving it'll be very packed there. But they said they've never maxed out the number of spots, but they had at one point like almost 40 cars there, so over 100 people inside. And you need a code to get in.
You mean to get in to charge?
No, to get into the building.
How do you get the code?
The
It's
lounge
in your
area?
car. So when you get to the charger, and you plug it in and you tap the icon on the dashboard, it'll pop up with the entry code and the key code.
Wow.
And then you type in the key code and you get into the building. So it's not just for anyone.
It's like buying a car wash at the gas station.
Yeah.
You get the code.
Exactly.
But this is like to get your coffee.
Yep. or your AC or your vending machine.
Yeah.
Get some water, get some Twizzlers. And then the next 2 stops we did, one was just like Mojave, California, middle of nowhere, small supercharger, but we had like nachos, and then the last one had a Dairy Queen next to it, and so we got ice cream. But the best part is that I've never done a road trip this way where intentionally you're forced to stop, 4 times for half an hour plus each. And it really helped break up the trip.
Oh, you are such silver lining this. Come on. No one wants to have to stop 4 times on the way to Vegas.
I never thought I'd want to either. But being forced to, it was really pleasant. It made the trip feel shorter.
Oh, really?
It made the whole... This is the thing. Like, I completely agree. Because if I was doing this on a car with way more range, or didn't have to stop as long, I want to go there as soon as possible. I want these stops. Get to the bathroom. I'm going to fill up the car. Want to get your snacks, jump in the car, get back on the road. Time's wasting. But when you're forced to actually enjoy the amenities or take a break and sit down and walk around or grab a ice cream, it actually makes road tripping very much more enjoyable. This is why roadside attractions work.
Right.
But didn't it take so much longer?
It did take a long time. So I think it took 10 or 11 hours.
Did everyone share your sentiment?
Yes.
Really?
From driver to passenger, all 4 of us were like, this has been the most pleasant road trip.
Yeah, but we know the driver. He's not one for positive sentiment.
Exactly.
But-
But he had a new car.
He's not one for buyer's remorse either.
Yeah. That's
What
true.
about the trip home?
I flew back. I did the smart way.
And Danica too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wonder if
I had a companion, Southwest companion.
I wonder
pass.
how those stops felt coming home.
I didn't want to know. Yeah.
Does it? But now, like, you probably would be more willing to do this kind of thing in your car.
Yeah. No. Totally. I mean, there were scary moments that I think they. On the dashboard, it'll say, these are the 4 stops we have planned for you. By the time you get to stop number 3
Yeah.
from stop number 2, if you charge because they want to optimize for your time as well. If you charge just 25 minutes at stop number 2, you won't have a full charge, but you'll have enough to get to stop number 3. By the time you get to stop number 3, you have 14% battery. That's a little bit range anxiety giving.
Sure.
Like, so we stayed extra 10 minutes above the recommended time to get that extra mileage so that we wouldn't be stuck. So it wouldn't say you'd be under 20% at the next stop.
I love my electric car, but I do not have a Tesla. I do not have access to that supercharger network or that cool mapping system that you've got. That's all first party done.
Right.
There's PlugShare. There's third parties that have tried to do this, but without the supercharger network, the really high voltage charging network, it's really hard to do road trips in other EVs.
And I bet if you were pressed for time, this would be stressful because you would be sitting in your car or you'd be standing around waiting, and compared to putting in, filling up a tank of gas at a gas station, it is orders of magnitudes times longer, even though we're talking about difference between, 4 minutes and half an hour or 45 minutes. So you just can't watch the pot boil.
Yeah.
Right. Don't watch the kettle. You got to enjoy Kettleman City. Everyone got to buy the T-shirts. Everyone's there buying the T-shirts, and you got to sit down, check your phone. You don't want to check your email anyway, right? You can play a game on your phone, and if you don't think about it, then the time does go by pretty quickly. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed road tripping.
Yeah. Just for people that don't follow EVs, the charging network that the superchargers are, I believe that's 480 volts, right?
Yeah. You won't care about the amps.
Am I wrong about that? But it's like normal chargers are half that. Like most of the EV chargers that are available to people like who drive a Volt, like me, or Bolts, or the Leaf, or all that stuff, most of those chargers are half what the superchargers are. So it's and it makes a big difference.
So your car gets superpowers then?
What?
It can go like 150 miles an hour all of a sudden. No?
No.
Oh.
No.
It just charges faster?
You're out of
That's
your element,
lame.
Donnie.
That sucks.
We also didn't do autopilot most of the way down.
You didn't?
We just did the adaptive cruise control, but not steering.
Really?
Yeah. There wasn't enough trust in.
Oh, interesting.
in the driver.
Well, good. Good.
I would trust it. If I was driving, it'd be autopilot all the way down.
I know it's been a long intro segment, but I have to share a quick story about something that happened to me this week. On Twitter, I shared an idea that I've had for months now, which is I want this weird thing. I have a multicolored 3D printer, right? So it prints in 4 colors. And there's other things that are 4 colors in this world, and mainly what comes to my mind are old 1980s CGA computer graphics or Nintendo graphics, like the original NES. Most of those sprites in Mario and Zelda, they're only 3 colors, sometimes 4. The 4th is sometimes used for transparency, but you can get some cool imagery with limited colors. And I've always wanted to drag a sprite from, Mario into an app and have it spit out STL files so that I can print those on my printer. And I've tried to do this with different tools that are available, and I had never had success. So I finally tweeted, "Can this be done?"
Right.
Less than 24 hours later, it is now possible.
You are doing it.
It is now possible.
Now you're printing it flat up, right? Not from the foot to the head.
No. Yeah, no, it's a sprite that's like flat.
Flat.
It's a
like
flat
a pancake.
thing. It's a pancake 3D print. But this guy, somebody responded, they said, "Have you seen this tool?" I said, "No, but it looks like it gets me halfway there." I wrote the guy who made the tool. Apparently, he lives in England. His name is James. And he wrote back.
What is the tool? You ingest a sprite?
Yes. And his tool, you would raise the different colors to different heights. So that it's meant to be printed on a single color 3D printer.
Right.
And you could change the color out for your height and essentially get the same effect.
Right.
I said, can you render each color out as a different file?
Yeah.
Different model. And I'm telling you, within hours, he had done this, and now
It's a web tool.
Now anybody can use this.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's not a web tool. It's an executable.
okay.
So, but you download it, you drag your sprite on, and it works with high res. I don't think there's a hard limit on number of colors, and it's super cool. So I printed out 4 different things. There's some Mario ones,
Whoa.
and Zelda, and Kirby,
That's awesome.
and like the possibilities are really vast. I mean, you could embed this artwork in the side of a 3D printed arcade cabinet and actually print like side art for something as
Inlays.
it goes up. Yeah, inlays or a marquee or anything that you like. I mean, it really kind of opens up a lot of
Well,
possibilities.
this seems ripe to combine with laser cutting.
You could actually, you could export these STLs as EPS files or something.
I'm saying you can inlay this in perfectly
Yeah,
carved out, 1/8-inch acrylic,
sure.
and plug those in.
Or attach them to magnets. And
Why didn't you use
have it
your fancy new bed for the textured?
I don't have the new the multi-material upgrade for the MK3. So
okay.
that's still in the mail. It's not in the mail.
This is the MK2.
Prusa has started to ship those. Yes, this is the original multi-material thingy that I
Right.
got a year ago. The new one should be much better because it has shorter retracts.
What's the thickest you've tried for this?
These were tests. The Mario is the thickest one. You got the
Right
Mario
here.
over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but thickness is just a matter of time.
I mean, that's also a stylistic preference too.
Sure.
Like what is the thickness of a pixel?
If
What
you
is what is the
Right.
depth of a voxel?
This defaults to 1 millimeter, and then you resize it in your slicer. But so if you print this thicker, it would actually stand on its own.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Yeah.
cool.
So I'm just super happy that that's done. I know there's probably a couple people who share my enthusiasm, but
Well, they're fused. It's fused. The plastic is fused built in.
exactly.
How long was something like this?
10 minutes.
Wow,
That's great. A Tested fan came up to me and handed me a 3D print at DragonCon, and it had heat-sensitive material. I'd never seen heat-sensitive filament. So when you hold it in your palm, it changes color.
What?
Oh.
It changed like a little bit of opacity. It didn't change like fully to like. It wasn't like the shirts.
That's cool. I didn't even know you could buy that.
I didn't know that existed. I thought it was great.
I mean, pixel art's fun for kids to design too.
Exactly. There's lots of tools on iPads and whatnot people could design with.
And now you can turn those into little desktop toys.
Print
widgets.
it.
Print it. Yes. We're going to loop in our biggest story this week into pop culture because it comes from that world. Are you going to
I'm ready.
play it? No?
What? Play it? There's something to play?
Well, top story this week.
Oh, this is top story, isn't it? God, this podcast is gonna be so long.
Top story this week.
I have questions.
All right. We had the release of 2 Marvel movies this year already. We had Infinity War, and we also had, or not more than 2 Marvel movies. The 2 ones related to Infinity War. Post Infinity War, we're gonna have Infinity War Part 2, whatever it's called, and also we're gonna have Captain Marvel. This is the first female-led superhero film in the MCU, played by Brie Larson as the title character, Captain Marvel.
Yep.
And a beloved character in the comics with a long history. And interestingly, we're going to leave on mild spoilers because this is published synopsis of the story. This is a movie set in the past. At least much of it. We think we set in the 90s.
You've had your chance at the 80s, Jeremy. It's our turn in the 90s now. There's a photo of Brie Larson wearing a 9-inch nail shirt. It's our time now.
How much younger
Norm.
do you think you are than me?
I don't know, like at least a year.
I don't know who Captain Marvel is. The first time I ever heard of Captain Marvel was in the end of Infinity War when Samuel Jackson calls her up.
Well, drops a pager.
Yeah.
Drops a space pager.
Yeah. What?
And then he doesn't even say her name. Drops a space pager, and then the icon, Captain Marvel, the star.
Who
pops up.
is Captain Marvel?
There's-
and why are they named for the comic book company?
There's multiple Captain Marvels that have existed in Marvel Comics. The original Captain Marvel was a man, and he battled Thanos and some other like sort of cosmic level entities. And he had a famous run where he actually gets cancer from his powers and passes away. It's
God.
It is actually
Wow.
it was actually a fairly well written piece because it is very sad. The Captain Marvel we see here is Carol Danvers. She's sort of the second. She might be the third. Don't nerds keep me honest there. Who takes up the mantle? And the origin story goes that she is a fighter pilot.
Well, let's go back to the world of Captain Marvel because the photos that Entertainment Weekly has released establish it as a much bigger world than just one superhero because it is in the cosmic realm, right? Like Guardians of the Galaxy, this is a film that happens in space, and it is about space cops. And so if you remember Guardians of the Galaxy, you had the Nova Corps, which were the space cops, right?
Right.
Nova Corps, John C. Reilly was one of the members of the Nova Corps. They flew those ships, and they were fighting. The antagonist was Ronan the Accuser, played by Lee Pace. He had the giant hammer.
Right.
He's the one who couldn't do the dance-off with Star-Lord.
Oh, yeah.
But he was the one that he was described as a religious fanatic in Guardians of the Galaxy 1.
Why are you hating on his dance moves? We don't know the answer to that
He was so
question.
confused by the dance-off and distracted. It worked. And Ronan the Accuser is described as a Kree fanatic. So Kree is a space race.
Have we seen the Kree?
We've only seen Ronan the Accuser.
Oh, he's a Kree.
He's a Kree.
Okay, gotcha.
So
We've
he was
seen-
like, think of him as like evil space pope.
We've seen Kree in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show.
It's kind of similar, but also not really tied in. But the point is, the Kree is a whole race of people in space. They're very advanced, and they had their version of Superman, they called Captain Mar-Vell. Mar-Vell.
Wait, and that was still a play on words, right? I mean,
Yes.
this was an
So
inside joke
when-
with comic book fans?
Yeah, so when Kishore talks about there being a Captain Marvel character,
Yeah.
Marvel Comics wanted the word Marvel, right? And why not? Our company's
Why
called
not?
Marvel.
Because it's a fourth wall. Seems like a Deadpool kind of thing.
Our company's called Marvel. We need to own the name. We need to have a character called Captain Marvel.
You're kidding.
DC, Shazam, that movie coming out?
Yep.
Also Captain Marvel.
What are you talking about?
That's his name
That's
in
his
the
name.
DC
In the
universe.
DC universe. There are two Captain Marvels.
Oh my
That's
God.
why it's very confusing. So Marvel Comics had a Captain Marvel, but that character became so popular they needed to establish this backstory. It's like, okay, you're right. Maybe it's breaking the fourth wall a little bit too much. How can we have this character be called Captain Marvel, but also have this little space backstory? Well, we'll rename him Captain Mar-Vell.
Yeah, the
M-A-R,
hyphen. It's really the
and
hyphen.
the extra L.
Okay.
V-E-L-L.
Right. It's like Colbert.
Exactly. Mar-Vell. It's basically the powers of Superman. Fly through space, super strength, flight, cosmic awareness. And he has these armbands called the Negabands that give him power. But Captain Marvel still had that tragedy because Marvel, this comics, do this great tragedy with their heroes. He dies, right? He is a hero, but he does not live forever. He has the cancer. He dies. And this character is actually in the movie, the upcoming movie,
Really?
played by Jude Law. So photos of Jude Law, that is Mar-Vell.
So there's two Captain Marvels in this
well,
movie?
it's a mantle. It is passed on.
I see.
So he trains a human, Carol Danvers, who is a fighter pilot. And she earns the mantle.
She is chosen?
She is chosen.
Not unlike Shazam.
Well, not unlike Green Lantern either. We're talking about fighter pilots joining space cops. To hold the mantle of the new Captain Marvel. And she then is endowed with the powers of Captain Marvel with the Negabands.
Wow.
Where she has flight and she has super strength, endurance, and cosmic awareness. And so we anticipate this movie to be about the Kree.
Is she more powerful than Thor?
It's hard to say.
No.
I would,
Thor held together, a space forge and had the power of exploding sun pass through him.
So,
but she's in that realm
Yeah.
of power.
is that right?
Yeah, she's not like Black Widow.
she
No, I get it.
she is Superman.
Could she
era.
lift Mjolnir?
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 No, you have to be worthy to lift the hammer.
So she
Captain
could,
America couldn't lift it.
She couldn't?
No.
Okay. All right.
Only
You know,
because
you know
of
the new Stormbreaker.
Hulk couldn't lift it.
Hulk couldn't lift it. He was definitely not worthy. The new Stormbreaker does not have that restriction. The new hammer,
Oh, really? That's
Yeah.
interesting.
because Groot could lift it too.
So you're saying that the only reason that Thor did not end Infinity War then and there is because he didn't aim for the head?
Because he didn't aim for the head.
That's it.
Well, also Spider-Man had the glove almost off, and and Star-Lord screwed it up by getting emotional.
I figured that Captain Marvel was it, like more powerful than anybody, but I guess not.
Well, she may have allies that together may form together a space force or a star force, as it were. That
Don't use that term.
that will return to Earth to ward off Thanos. But the photos are notable for a couple of reasons. One, and these are again minor spoilers from the Entertainment Weekly cover story. We see young Samuel L. Jackson de-aged with makeup.
This is amazing. Like
De-aging is where it's at.
I know they did it with Robert Downey, but this is amazing looking.
And you can kind of tell with the photo that some of it's practical makeup effects too, with the wig and then smooth out with
Is
some
it?
of the CG.
All right.
But it looks really good.
I wonder what he thinks seeing that. That would be really
He
freaky.
knows I'm sure he thinks it's not perfect, right?
I
I'm
wonder.
sure he's
I
impressed
wonder.
by it.
I
but,
wonder.
Like your own face better than anyone else,
Right.
So it's in the 90s. You're gonna have Agent Coulson probably de-aged. You're gonna have Samuel L. Jackson. You're gonna have younger version of Shield. We will have to find the mystery of why Earth does not know about Captain Marvel. Was there a memory wipe or was she sent off into space?
Mm-hmm.
Other photos indicate show Jude Law as Mar-Vell, so there's got to be a indoctrination sequence where she is brought into the Kree world and earns the mantle of Marvel.
So this will be an origin story for her.
They said it won't actually be a full origin story. That she'll start the movie off with powers, but I'm sure we'll see flashbacks.
Sure,
of her
we're gonna
relationship,
get some origin story.
of her mentorship with Mar-Vell.
I mean, this isn't a famous character. They
Yeah.
have to do some of that just for the
Yeah.
character development.
You also see in one shot Mar-Vell with Ronan, the Accuser, the villain from Guardians of the Galaxy, because it's the Kree. So maybe before his fanaticism, or maybe it hadn't surfaced yet. But Lee Pace is back, and Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, with a team of this Star Force, which includes one of Ronan's right-hand men. So some of the characters from Guardians 1 are brought back because this is set in the 90s, and you'll see them in these flashback sequences. The most exciting thing, there are two really exciting things for me that are for comic fans. One, Carol Danvers is going to be a fighter pilot, and one of her co-pilots is
You can't spoil this, but yeah.
another amazing character in the Marvel canon.
I think what you are basically saying is there's no accidental names
Yes.
ever dropped in
yeah.
a Marvel movie.
Oh, yeah. And then the antagonists of the film look like they will be, for the first time appearing in the MCU, the Skrull.
What did you think about how they looked?
I think Thanos has the look of Thanos informed the look of the Skrull a lot. I think they got their chins right. I think they looked a little bit too much like the Dark Elves.
I thought they did a pretty good job. So the Skrull are these famous villains. They fought the Fantastic Four and a number of other heroes. Some of them have shape-shifting abilities, and they look real strange. They have Thanos' chin, their green skin. They have these weird kind of vibrant purple outfits, which is going to be hard to take to screen. I actually think they did a really good job because their outfits in the comics are ridiculous.
No skull caps.
Yes.
That ruins it for me. Skrulls in the comics have a little Vision style purple on the top, but these are pointy-eared aliens. They have lots of face ridges. I think the prosthetics look great. It's Ben Mendelsohn again, just playing another villain in a Disney film. The reason it's interesting from a business standpoint is because the Skrull is a joint ownership between Marvel and Fox.
Again.
And they are technically the primary villains in the Fantastic Four universe. And so Marvel can use them, Fox can use them, and Marvel is going to use them in this movie. Kishore alluding to the shift-changing abilities of Skrull. It's one of their defining characteristics, is that they implant secret agents and infiltrate worlds and governments with shape-shifting Skrulls. Gives a huge potential for one of the big stories from Marvel Comics in the past 10 years, which is Secret Invasion.
Like the Blue Woman from the X-Men?
Yes, like Mystique.
Like that.
Except a whole race of people who do that.
That's crazy.
So,
that's too much.
They could reestablish some canon where familiar characters that you thought were human the whole time could have been Skrull.
Oh, boy.
Lots to digest.
Jeremy's out on this movie.
Lots to digest.
It's, I'm totally in on it. I'm excited for it. I miss Nick Fury. I like his character a lot, and I'm glad to see him back.
I want to be de-aged. That's what I want. I want I want to know how much this service is that Marvel provides.
Well, that's what they're talking about. Like legit with actors is to record all the phonemes so that they can have them exist forever, and they
We
will
gotta
just
sign
be
away the rights.
CG, and they'll just have make their voices.
And someone else would do the performance capture. Just all the gate movements and interesting. All right.
Is that
so that's it for biggest story this week. If you are fans of Captain Marvel, I'm sure we're missing a ton of the history. Let us know what we're missing and how Jeremy can also be enlightened.
All right, I already played the music.
All right, let's move on. Other pop culture news. Hey, last week we talked about one of 2 to 3 Joker films in the works in the DC cinematic universe, and I think Joaquin Phoenix one had casting with Alec Baldwin potentially playing Thomas Wayne. Guess what? 5 minutes after we recorded the podcast,
DC heard our thoughts, and
Debunked.
Alec Baldwin's out.
He's out of the film. Scheduling conflicts, whatever it is, creative differences, out of the film. Not happening. Also brought me where there's some really good Instagram accounts where people have photoshopped actors into the roles that they've been cast for. And some of the photoshops of Joaquin Phoenix as Joker are compelling me to think that it would be good. I really want to see. You got to see these. You got to see these photoshops.
He commits. It wouldn't be bad.
Yeah. Michael Bay is working with Ryan Reynolds on a film in the Middle East right now. I want to say they're in Dubai filming a war movie, quote unquote.
Yep.
And
Like a more serious movie?
well, don't know. Michael Bay has been known to make war movies, and I don't think they've collaborated before. But IGN has a report that war movie is just a front. And it turns out that Michael Bay and Ryan Reynolds are together making a Thundercats movie.
What now? Wait.
Thunder.
How is
Thunder.
this not the top story of the week? Holy crap.
Thundercats.
You like Thundercats?
Like is a little strong, but I have fond memories
Do
of
you?
Thundercats.
I never got Thundercats. I don't understand why they're exciting.
What do you mean?
I don't get it.
They're anthropomorphized cats that were fighting a mummy crypt keeper that was magical.
But you compare that to
What do you not get about that?
What do they change into? If I could have,
what cars they change into?
that's what I want.
Tell me what cars they change into. I'm
There's
sure
this really suggestive sword that the guy uses.
it came off the heels of He-Man, and it was produced with some, I believe, animation done in Japan. So a lot of the appeal of Thundercats for the millennials or Generation Y is that the animation was so different than what we'd previously seen on Saturday morning cartoons.
Was this another one of those products that started as a toy
I don't know.
and became a cartoon?
I'm sure there were lots of toys.
The toys were actually pretty good. I liked them. I think for a one-word theme song, that might be the best one-word theme song that existed in the 1980s.
If you're not into Thundercats, maybe you need to wait for the Toys That Made Us for that episode of Thundercats, and that might get you into it. I don't know if that's what's going to happen.
Oh, I thought that was next in the
I
pop
would-
culture section.
I would love to see
Okay.
that happen. But we all saw Toys That Made Us, and Jeremy, I remember you saying that you really appreciated the Masters of the Universe episode. That was a really good episode of that series.
Yeah, well, they talked about exactly that how they started out. It was a market research project.
Exactly.
And
Kids like the power, like having the power over their parents, and like not being told what to do. And so they designed a concept and also characters that were unlike the current toys and action figures of that time with extra bulky muscles. There's a new Netflix documentary that's just newly on Netflix, but it's been out for a little bit, about just the Masters of the Universe, and it's called Power of Grayskull. And if you enjoyed the Toys That Made Us episode, this is an hour and a half, 2 hours long, full documentary, interviews with a lot of the same people, but a lot of new people as well.
Is it related to the toys that made us?
It's not related at all. It was a Kickstarter back documentary.
Oh, wow.
And I think the filmmakers originally did a Ninja Turtles documentary, which had mixed reviews. But I got to say, this Power of Grayskull one is fantastic.
Oh, I'm watching it tonight.
And they go through the whole history, the rise and fall of Thundercats, the revivals, and the films. And they got Dolph Lundgren and Frank Langella to do extensive interviews.
Who are they?
Dolph Lundgren?
Yeah.
He-Man in the He-Man movie. Rocky IV.
There was a He-Man movie?
Have you never seen Masters of the Universe?
Are you? I can never tell if you're messing with me or not.
Dolph Lundgren is the villain of every bad 80s action movie.
He's Drago in Rocky IV.
Yeah, okay.
And after that, he was cast as He-Man in Masters of the Universe, the Canon Films film. And Frank Langella, who played Dracula, classically trained actor, and he played Skeletor.
Like Raul Julia in Street Fighter, right?
Just like that. Except Skeletor hamming it up, saying, "Is the loneliness of good equal to the loneliness of evil?"
Frank Langella, you'll recognize. He's the Count Dooku, right?
No, that's Christopher Lee.
Oh, that's Chris Lee. Yeah.
Frank Langella was in the Brandon Routh Superman, played Perry
They
White.
actually do look alike. That's
a little bit. You have this amazing, legendary actor in this documentary about He-Man, like waxing nostalgic about his role as Skeletor. It's almost like a mockumentary. Like, it's beautifully lit, and he's just like talking about, I have such fond memories of being Skeletor.
Really?
And the making of that film.
Wow.
My son loved He-Man. I couldn't turn it down.
Can we kickstart the Transformers version of this documentary? That's what I want.
Get a good filmmaker. It's a wonderful Power of Grayskull. Highly recommended. They do go into a lot of this, like the same ground as Toys That Made Us in terms of like the manufacture, the design. You see concept art of like these were 5 iterations of He-Man and Tila before we actually narrowed down on this design. And if you haven't seen Masters of the Universe, that 1987 film, it's one of those so bad.
Wait,
it's
live
good.
action?
Live action.
1987?
1987.
That's crazy. All right.
Canon Films.
Wow.
Dolph Lundgren playing He-Man. Designed by Mobius.
Don't watch
Jean-Guiron Mobius did the costume design. Get this. Courtney Cox plays the Earth human with a love interest.
Wow.
Also played by a very young, what's his name? Tom Paris from Star Trek Voyager. Robert Duncan McNeil.
Guess what the Rotten Tomatoes score is on Masters
17%.
You cheated. It is 17%.
I hold my arms out. My Wikipedia.
His arms are wide.
Yes.
I want to issue a correction. I looked at the Instagram photos of Joaquin Phoenix photoshopped as a Joker. I want to apologize to Norm.
My
They
arms
look
are
pretty
back wide out right now. And finally, in the pop culture news, I have a movie recommendation. I said this on Still Untitled this week, but I highly encourage you guys to watch the movie Searching.
Okay.
And
This is Taken just with John Cho.
no, although I'd watch that movie as well. The reason this is interesting is that from a filmmaking standpoint, this is a movie done. You know how Cloverfield was found footage, and it kicked off a kind of it wasn't the first found footage film, but it was the first one that kicked off like this, the fad of, can we make a film, the technical challenge of telling a full story of just footage found in recorded in film, right?
Okay, fine.
With Cloverfield, it's one camera. I think Chronicle. Remember Chronicle is
Come on,
also found footage.
Blair Witch sort of did that first, right?
Right, but there was a whole wave of them, right?
Yeah, okay.
This one isn't the first for this type of movie, but this is a full screen captured movie. This is a movie told entirely from the capture of computer screens.
That's a way to
phone
save
screens,
save some money.
But it's not, because they had this. It's old OSs, it's new OSs. They had to fake Wikipedia web search. It's about a father searching for his lost daughter.
Do you mean webcams or?
And so how do you look at the actors? Exactly. It's FaceTime calls on FaceTime built into the Mac program. And so the actors are acting in front of webcams, essentially. And so the footage is all 30 FPS. It looks like theater. And the audio is like, it's nice quality audio, but there's no cutting. There's no editing that they do within those shots or musical score. It's all done in semi-real time. And you're going through the journey of what does a father feel like when he's looking for a missing daughter, and how do you go into your child's online presence to find clues about your child? What would you do? How you search them on Facebook, you search them on Instagram, you search them on Twitter, and then they really clever. I don't want to reveal all the plot details, but you find really clever ways to dive into a person's digital history and online presence. One of the more interesting things they do is it's text messaging, right? A lot of the communication happens via iMessage on Mac OS, and you see the characters type out messages and then delete the message and type something new.
Yeah.
So you have internal monologue presented as typed out messages and then revised messages.
But you're not hearing dialogue that whole time?
I mean, it's both.
Oh.
It's conversations, it's a mix, and it
Weird.
works perfectly. I highly recommend it. It's a really good story too, but just as a achievement in this type of innovative filmmaking. I don't think all films should be made this way, not by a long shot.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily need to see this as a trend, but as an exercise of can you tell a story through the medium of the digital screen?
Yeah.
It totally works.
Yeah, cool.
And I think you enjoy it.
Ah.
All right. We have, today, as we're recording this, and as you're listening to this, is probably September 6th, less than 1 week from today, next Wednesday, will be the fall September Apple event. The invites went out last week, and the invites had the tagline, "Come round."
Yeah. Had a big circle on
With a
the
big circle, which, what does that mean?
It looks like the mothership, the new.
That's what I think people are guessing.
And that's where it's being held.
Yeah.
But usually that
No,
has
they're
some-
coming out with a circular phone.
Usually that has something to do with a new product.
Well, we expect new phones, we expect new watches, perhaps,
Yeah.
and maybe even the new thin form factor MacBook. One of the speculation based on this invite was maybe the watch would now be circular, but that probably will not be the case because on the heels of this invite being released were leaks
Yeah.
to the actual products. Like people have renders and promotional photos somehow.
Yeah, photographs.
So we'll start with the watch because Apple Watch Series 4, the images have popped out, and it looks like it'll have a bigger screen. The reports from 9 to 5 Mac say that it'll have a high resolution, 384 by 480, as opposed to the 312 by 390, so slightly high resolution. We don't think the actual 42 millimeter form factor will be bigger, but maybe more closer edge to edge
Exactly,
bevel
yeah.
display. And the big question I have is, will it be thinner? Because the new render, maybe it's a clever angle just to make it look thinner, but the big complaint I think people have is that it's a thick watch.
It doesn't look any thinner to me
Yeah.
because you can look at the crown. Is that what it's called? The little
Yeah.
knob?
Yes.
Digital crown.
Yeah.
Digital crown, and it still seems like it takes up the same thickness of the phone.
The crown looks more recessed in the chassis, and there is now a little microphone port between the crown and the button, so tapping the Siri more. But they don't show the back of it, at least from these leaks, so you can't tell how much heart rate sensor really bulges out from the back, which it does in the current watches.
So maybe just a bigger screen. And what the screenshots show are a new face that has a lot of information on it.
Yeah. This new high density display with temperature, with a timer.
Complications.
Lots of. It's very complicated.
So they're rendering images or text now, like on a curve. So you'll be able to apply more things to your face. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, it's pretty busy.
This is the first big form factor update since the first gen. I mean, it really makes anyone who bought that $10,000 gold watch 3 years ago feel like they're really outdated now. Not only is the battery life probably not great, but
I have the first gen. I have the Series 0. Battery life is fine. Still lasts all day.
yeah.
But it's not made of gold. Mine's not.
Yeah.
I got the cheap one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll find out quickly whether people are willing to plop down $350 every 3 years for a watch, which is, at scale, really unprecedented. But we'll see. Gather round. That's the invitation. New iPhones. So we've all been expecting the iPhone 10 form factor expanded, and now we have potentially a new name, iPhone XS, as this year's iPhone 10 replacement. And then for the bigger one, iPhone XS Max.
Max, like max headroom.
They really want people to not say iPhone XS.
Did people from Microsoft who worked on the Xbox One X name come down to Apple? This name is terrible.
That's pretty bad.
It's pretty bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
But okay, let's talk about the phones itself.
Why not Plus? I don't understand that. I mean, and this is still a rumor. This is not. I don't know why their 9 to 5 Max is reporting that as likely the name, but it is.
Unless they have internal documents.
This is
or
not
really
Apple,
good sources.
Just to be clear, this is not Apple news. Official.
Fair. Well, let's talk about the phone itself, because name is whatever it's going to be. Phone looks like a update to the X in a lot of ways. That's
that's
there's
it.
not much else to
There you
say,
go.
Better
right?
camera, better processor. What else do you need?
To be expected.
Right? Unless they have like really killer AR apps that are coming out, there's I don't think I'm going to update this year.
But there's a bigger one. That's the news.
I don't want the bigger
Is that
one.
there's a larger iPhone 10?
Yeah. Do you think? Here's a question: will this new iPhone 10 support the stylus, the pencil?
Right. Yeah. I mean,
Because its nearest competitor at that size is Galaxy Note 9, and a lot of people love the Note 9 for the little built-in stylus. There's a slot for it on the phone, and if you're going to buy these quote-unquote phablet phones, here's a way for them to sell you a $100 accessory, maybe a smaller pencil. Doesn't need to be as long, right? It's not for your iPad. Maybe not the crayon that Logitech came out with, but a smaller, like note-taking pencil.
oh, really? Yeah.
Form factor can be slightly smaller for the phone.
The question is, are there not enough, improvements besides that to warrant an upgrade, to warrant the purchase, to make people excited?
What would get you to upgrade?
I already talked about that, and people think it's funny, but the
headphone jack, yeah.
But
That's not going to happen. What new feature would get you to update?
it hurts when you say that. I just want you to know that
it's not going to happen.
The pencil's cool. I mean, I have wondered why they haven't released another iPad Mini in an eons one, preferably that supports the pencil. That would be nice, and maybe this is the reason.
I would upgrade if they had 120 FPS screens.
You would? Yeah, I imagine that's the kind of thing that you can't go back from, but you don't know how good it is until you got it.
Why would you do that? Like, for what purpose? Like, I understand if you're gaming on your iPhone, 120 FPS would be great.
Even browsing the web.
Really?
It is so smooth. I care less about the gaming. I care way more about just just scrolling through Instagram and Twitter.
When are you using that, on an iPad Pro?
I've only used it on the iPad Pro occasionally. I don't have one that has that screen, but
okay.
From the time I've used it,
yeah,
and using that Razer phone that had that, it was just
okay.
so smooth. It's one of those. It's tough to go back.
That's what I said.
Have we gotten any pricing leaks?
No, that's a good question.
It'll be expensive.
Do you think they're going to go up from last year? Do you think the 10S is going to be more than the 10 was last year?
No, I think
they'll keep it the same.
The big one will be.
The big one's bigger, right?
That's
fine.
But that's the new SKU. Yeah, the S is just taking the place of the 10. Typically, they're the same price.
Yeah, so you think it's going to come in? What was it last year? $999.
My question is, will they up the RAM, the storage? Will it be 256 and 512?
There is
something like that.
No excuse for a low storage iPhone anymore.
Well, I think they only have 2 now, right? I don't think the low one is all that bad. I could be mistaken about that, but I wonder how big they'll go.
All right, from phone news to some camera news, we talked about Nikon moving into the mirrorless camera territory, full frame, and Canon, which had their Canon M line of mirrorless cameras with APS-C sensors. Now, this week at Photokina, also release or announce a new full frame mirrorless. This is where everyone's going. I mean, 5 years from now, we may not see cameras that have optical viewfinders. That would make me very, very sad.
Now, tell me why. Why would you want an optical viewfinder?
Well, one of the reasons is all the existing lenses work perfectly with it. The entire library of wonderful lenses that work at those full frame. And also the reaction time. I don't need additional digital information. I want to see light as it is as it is looking through the lens on the viewfinder as I take a picture. It's just how my brain wants to take pictures.
But the optical viewfinder won't adjust. You won't change all the settings for you, right? Like, can't the actual digital viewfinder do an approximation of how the ISO and aperture and
Yes, yeah,
all
yeah.
of that will
I
affect your
trust
photo?
my
I see.
familiarity with the settings and the environment, and that's a good point. Like I have on optical viewfinder cameras, I have the optical if I want the framing and I want the perfect moment and with no delay, and I have the digital viewfinder if I'm in a situation where I need to see the approximation with all those settings in place. If you're talking about mirrorless camera, you only have, you have two options, but they're exactly the same option. You're looking through EVF or you're looking through the display.
Can't the mirrorless? I would think that they could take faster photos too, because there's no the mechanical.
Exactly, and the sensors can be much better. Can be more powerful. So this EOS R line, which they're launching, I think $3,000, will have new lenses. This is the new lens mount is going to be called a RF system, and 30 megapixel full frame sensor with their new Digic 8 processor and a number of autofocus points in terms of speed.
Yeah.
5,000.
What?
Autofocus points.
What does that mean?
Over 5,000.
That's crazy.
Yes. I don't know how many of those are the cross. They're both horizontal and vertical. But it's supposed to. It's a massive camera. It will take pictures really quickly, and they have new lenses to go with it. And one of the new lenses that's getting a lot of press is a zoom lens that's 28 to 70 f2.
All throughout?
All throughout.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I assume that there's an adapter for your old lenses if you need it?
Yeah, I bet there will be an adapter, yes. So that's a lot of lenses. Their ecosystem is bigger, and it may fragment their customer base a little bit. It's also really late to the game because Sony's had their full frame mirrorless cameras out for a while with fixed lens and interchangeable lens.
They're into the third generation now, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's very, very competitive. We'll see.
Apple storage comes in 64 gigabyte and 256 gigabyte. I think 64 is enough, don't you?
No.
Okay.
That's way too little.
It's
for
all
this day
cloud
and
now.
age.
It's all. I'm not putting anything on my phone like I used to.
Well, photos are stored locally before it uploads to the
but
cloud.
photos.
This is a way to get you to pay for iCloud. That sucks. Just give us more storage.
Okay.
Let's talk about some game news. Hey, Spider-Man's coming out this week.
It's out today.
Today.
Is it? Oh. No, the 7th.
Thursday. Yeah.
Tomorrow.
Sorry, you're right. I thought
Tomorrow.
it was coming out Thursday. You're right. It comes out
Friday.
Okay.
It only feels like it's out right now because so many people we know have played it, and people are liking it.
I thought games came out on Tuesday, to be honest with you, but I guess mixing it up.
It is a big release for Sony. Insomniac Games, big open world Spider-Man game. The reviews have been very kind and say it's the best Spider-Man game ever.
Well, high 80s.
High 80s,
Yeah.
low 90s. I am really interested in the tech behind the game. And
Why?
because this is made for PS4 Pro,
Yeah.
HDR, 4K, and I don't want to give too much news to the acknowledging of the quote-unquote controversy, but some people have complained about what the game looks like compared to what they thought the game might look like based on an E3 trailer, right? So Digital Foundry YouTube channel, which deep dives into the tech engines of games, has done their review, and
neat.
it's a wonderful 30-minute watch. But it's super interesting because they do analysis about actual resolution, what the game actually renders at on the PS4 and the PS4 Pro.
Oh, interesting.
The game renders and has dynamic scaling between scenes.
They got a build to do this? Wow.
And they did analysis based on their methods. So what they did was they turned off motion blur, and in scenes where the game engine apparently has some upsampling that it does, but the dynamic upsampling takes a moment to activate. So in scenes where they cut to a different part of the scene,
Little ghosting.
they freeze framed it, and then they counted the pixels per line, and they can calculate the game actually based on their approximations has a range of like 2K to 4K resolution that shifts between scenes to keep that 30 FPS performance.
Got it.
The motion blur looks great, and they talked about how in terms of the motion blur.
Wait, you said 30. Did you mean 30 or
30?
It's locked at 30. The game.
They said it only dips under 30 very, very.
But it doesn't hit 60
Doesn't
on the
hit 60.
Pro.
No.
Holy cow! All right.
That's because there's so much to put, so many pixels. To push,
Okay.
right. Motion blur with the sharp focus in the center of the screen that really enhances the gameplay. It looks like the lighting looks fantastic. Some people debated like, what about these puddles in one scene that looked like there were more puddles in the E3 trailer, and why are there fewer puddles in this? And they really dismantle that whole argument, and he goes into analysis of like how the game engine essentially all video game engines cheat in terms of lighting. Right, there's no ray tracing, so how do you make these scenes look more lively? Well, you bake in light maps.
Mm-hmm.
Right, you bake in light maps, and then there are also cube maps, which are a way to generate fake geometry in a game. So what the game has, as you're web slinging through a city, or you're climbing up a wall, right? Let's say you climb up a skyscraper.
Yeah.
The skyscraper itself is a flat polygon with a texture on it, right?
Okay.
But in the game, you can actually see inside some of these buildings.
Yeah.
But those rooms aren't actually 3D modeled. Those rooms are just cube maps that take into account the camera angle and do a fake parallax.
Cool. Nice. Good
so
trick.
it lets you, as Spider-Man, climb up these buildings, and there are no characters, it's empty rooms.
Yeah.
And they have like a set number of these cube maps that they can kind of cycle between.
Huh.
And it breaks occasionally. Like if you go around a corner, it won't be like the same room on the left side of the building, on the right side of the building.
Yeah.
But they're basically texture effects to make it look like there's depth in there. And then they combine those cube maps with some real-time reflections, and also baked in lighting reflections based on the time of day, and combined, it makes it look super photorealistic.
I am as much a fan as you are of the tricks that game programmers have to use in order to pull off better and better graphics, given the limited amount of processing power that they always have.
And limited means like they're not small.
They're
but like
always limited, but
yes, their ambitions are always bigger than what the current tech enables.
They would like to do Pixar level graphics, but Pixar's never rendered in real time, a day in their lives. I still say you wouldn't think about any of that stuff 5 minutes into the game, and you just think about the gameplay. And is the game any fun to play?
That's what the people say. Yes, the game is fun to play, but I want to play it for the tech also. Like if I'm in an open world game, I care about population density of the characters. Why when we talked about the Cyberpunk 2077 trailer, I like the idea that it's a simulation. There's simulation engines for all the NPCs.
Yeah.
Like I want to feel like that world is alive in some way. And some of the tricks that Digital Foundry found for the Spider-Man game is like, for example, there will be bespoke events, like accidents that will happen, traffic accidents that will actually, a fire truck will come, an ambulance will come, and you're not supposed to interact with it necessarily, but it's just a thing that will happen in the city, and traffic will back up. Now, that accident only stays rendered as long as you're within a sphere of activity.
Yeah.
If you move beyond that sphere, then it just it assumes you're far enough away from it, you don't care about it anymore, and then it just literally fades away.
Is it a persistent event, though? Can you go back and it's still happening?
No, it won't. And the persistence is even diminished where if you look away from it, it stops rendering it and the traffic starts being unblocked. But the moment you turn back toward it, it fades back in, or immediately it's back in.
Yeah.
And then the car that was stopped, the first car that was stopped there,
Yeah.
in the simulation engine, it would be a different car.
It's like a dog, and like if you look at it, he stays still, but if you turn around, he starts moving.
If a traffic accident happens in a virtual game engine and no one's there to see it, did it actually happen?
That's exactly
It's a
it.
philosophical question.
Yeah, but it's been answered.
Yeah. I can't wait to play it and try it. I mean, I got the TV, got the 4K, got the HDR. I mean,
It's
these
true.
are what these games are
It's
made
true.
for.
Do you have the PS4 Pro?
I do have the PS4 Pro.
Oh, then you are
I'm
required
right.
to
Yeah,
get
I
this.
guess I might as well
You should
spend
have done
the
the
$70.
You should have done the Amazon pre-order.
No, they didn't have it.
Oh, really?
No discount. All right, going through a bunch of other tech news. Windows games that were previously exclusive to Windows on Steam
Yeah.
now work in Linux.
Well, that they've always, had this promise, right? Like Steam, Valve, they've been making Steam OS, which is their own, Linux-based OS for all of Steam to live on, hypothetically. Well, they have a new beta out, and apparently they're saying they're really close, and they have quite a number of games that they officially support when I say quite a number, it's not an extraordinary number. It's like 20 or some 27 officially supported games. But these are massive games like Star Wars Battlefront 2, the new Doom, Beat Saber, Fallout Shelter. There's a bunch of games that just work absolutely. But then they say you can unlock the option to try anything. And they're saying most games will run. Most Windows games will now run because they've done all this work on the Linux, support for DirectX.
So
11 and 12.
What about performance?
Well, that's going to be up to you mean like if you have the same processor,
Yeah.
is it going to run just as well?
Exactly.
I would love to know that. I'd be curious to see what the benchmarks are like on that. But I'll bet it's not too bad. This is low-level stuff, so it's quite cool. I wonder if we'll get to the point where PC gaming will be as easy as will become a console experience. If you want to build a PC for gaming, if that's all it will do, maybe this could actually become a much easier hobby to enjoy.
Awesome.
For old people. Because the kids, they don't care.
They don't care about the Linux.
They love tweaking.
No, I mean, will this matter does it only work on certain versions of Linux, or will it matter?
I think it's its own. Isn't it its own version? Isn't it like an ISO? I figured that the SteamOS is,
Okay.
it's its own deal.
So OEMs don't benefit from this at all.
I don't think so. I mean, unless you're talking about, Steam machines, which kind of failed.
They did.
Yeah.
All right. So next up, IMAX is moving into the home video system territory
How are they doing?
with branding. It's kind of like Dolby Atmos. They're selling Dolby Atmos experience in theaters, or THX Center for a long time. Certification. IMAX wants to certify home AV systems and have partnered with DTS in their audio codec for IMAX quality experiences in the home. I think it's marketing. I don't think that matters a lot. It may be marginally better, but this is IMAX feeling like they need to move beyond the cinema screens. So look forward to IMAX branded decoders and TVs in the future. Snap, which had their spectacle, Snapchat, has a new spectacle that they've launched. They're new glasses. These are the Spectacles 2 with two styles. They're called the Veronica and Nico, and they look ever so slightly better integrated into the sunglasses. They still look like giant sunglasses, and maybe giant sunglasses are a thing that people like. But even for people who like the look of giant sunglasses, I think these look really bulky. And even the staged models that they have wearing these in their photos don't look that great. The reason I bring it up is I think I know we want AR to happen, and I know we want AR to look as integrated as possible, but I think we need to let go of the dream of having AR that's going to be as seamless as what sunglasses look like today.
Do you think it'll be more like this?
I think it'll start off more like this.
I'm fine
and
with that.
I think the look of what people accept as sunglasses will change.
I'm slightly bothered by this, actually, because this feels like a return to like Google Glass, more surreptitious potential recording, because the other specs had like yellow on them. They're like much more visible that there's a camera.
Yeah.
This feels a little more secretive. No?
If we saw this, we would probably immediately see those cameras, but maybe some people who aren't tech savvy wouldn't even notice. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah.
It feels like
I hear
a
you.
weird privacy issue.
I don't know. I feel like that's just the future, and it's going to become more and more like that.
Can't wear that at the poker table.
No.
A couple other bits. Skydio, the autonomous drone that we tested, has a price drop and some new software features. It's now price cut $500 to $2,000. Same physical model for their R1 drone, but some new features that they've updated to their engine for better handling and better awareness of the environment.
I wonder if this is related to the announcements from DJI recently.
I think they're separate markets.
You
I
think?
think the Mavic is something you fly manually to get a very precise shot, and this is for someone who wants to go snowboarding or ride a bicycle and get video of themselves
Yeah.
and wants to be hand off completely. Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about? I think that's it for tech news.
Oh, I want to mention one thing that a tested listener tweeted at me, which is there's a show on the BBC called BBC Click that did an analysis of the tech behind the snap scene in Infinity War and how they actually did the CG for that. And they actually had it's a great little watch. I'll put it in the show notes. Like they actually had the actors there act out the whole scene and like overlaid the CGI. And if you go very quickly, even in the home release, you can see the moment it switches from
actors to
the
CGI?
actor to CG. It's really subtle. It's related
by frame.
It's related to the lighting, but you can see it actually switch.
Well,
but they had to invent this technology to create that effect.
It's always a mix, right? Like the actor's face was real, but the hair wasn't. Like what was most real most of the time, I would think, would be the eyes and some of the facial features.
They ended up CGing all of them because they had to create this
they had to go
dissolve
away.
effect, right? But I thought it was a great little 7-minute watch around the tech behind it and how. Even for something as simple as just like turning to smoke and ash, which is
that's not simple.
Yeah, it's not simple at all. I think that's the point. Is when I looked at that in the movie, I was like, oh, that's cool. Like I didn't think about it in terms of the technology that was behind it.
You were too busy being moved.
Crying.
Yeah.
You don't feel so good, Mr. Stark. Don't feel so good.
I don't know. Kishore sympathizes with Thanos in a weird way.
Sympathizes or looks up to.
Any good Thanos cosplays at Dragon
Yeah,
Con?
there was one that was exceptional. That was sort of that was crafted with like multi layers of what do you call those suits that are like kind of like the strongman suits, but like it was out of a film. I'm forgetting the cosplayer who did it, but they have suits that people wear to sort of appear bulked up in films.
Sure.
And he was wearing those as a base layer and then layered stuff on top of that. It looked so good in terms of when he was standing still. It was when he's in motion that you could see the foam doesn't bend like human skin does. But
It's all about that photo.
There's people that were 7 feet tall in Thanos costumes, so they're on stilts and. It's just sort of it was astounding the work that went into building out the layers to create the great heft on Thanos.
Well, it invites interaction from the other attendees who can then pose for photos. With an Iron Man cosplayer can walk up to Thanos and they can stage a fake fight for everyone's pleasure and entertainment. All right, that does it for technology news. Before we move on to our next segment, I want to thank the sponsor that makes this episode possible, and that's Emma. Here's some advice for anyone that sends emails to their customers. You deserve a better email marketing platform, one that's actually designed with your type of organization in mind. And unlike other email providers, Emma puts its customers first, offering powerful email marketing with a personal touch. With Emma, you have everything you need to connect your data, build your audience, and do your most successful marketing ever. Their easy-to-use platform makes advanced functionality accessible to everyone on your team, no technical skills required. You can even connect Emma with services you count on to run your business, like Salesforce and Google Analytics. Not to mention, Emma's award-winning team is always ready to support you on your email marketing strategy, design, list migration, and more. So put the power of email experts behind your marketing. Request a customized demo of Emma's email marketing platform today at myemma.com. Again, that's myemma.com, and thank them for sponsoring this week's episode.
I'm a pinball nerd. Pin. Just to my point. Finally, pinball. That makes me very happy. You will both remember vividly months ago when we got the news that the Pinball Arcade had lost the license to the Williams and Bally machines. And then the last day that you could buy those were, I want to say maybe a month ago. About a month ago. It was the end of July. Well, we have our answer. We know what happened to that license. It moved to Zen Pinball, the makers of Pinball FX 3 on Steam and like every other platform, including the Switch. And also the makers of Pinball FX2 VR, which debuted on the Oculus Store and is now also available on Steam. So just, 2 days ago, they announced this, that they had acquired the license to all of the Williams Bally games, which is great news. I think it's great news because they seem to care a little bit more about their games. Now, the question is they've never done remakes before. They've always done their own original games, which means that they have carte blanche to make the physics behave the way they're supposed to behave, tailored to their games. But they seem to have, while they do some magic on the playfield and they make things happen that you would never find in a real game, they also respect that it's supposed to look like pinball and that the pinball is rolling around on the game and it doesn't get too magical. So I think that they're going to be good shepherds of this. And the question is, is it going to feel like their old games? Well, they answered that question, and they're not. They've developed a whole new physics engine just for the Williams Bally licensed titles, so it will feel like a new experience compared to their older games.
How would you rank the physics engines between these simulations? Is there one that you prefer that you're like, that's it, that feels just like?
That used to be an easier question to answer because there was a company called Pro Pinball that was in the game, and they would, where there was Pinball Dreams and Pinball Fantasies, these Amiga ports there used to be coming over to the PC. They were fun and all, and they had great music, and they were good titles, but they didn't feel real. They all shipped with multiple games, but then you had these Pro Pinball guys come out, and they would sell you one game in a box, one pinball game.
Wow.
I forget what Time Shock was their big hit. They only had 4 of these.
So you're saying that the engine they may have tweaked for the game, so it wasn't just a universal platform.
The Pro Pinball thing?
Yeah.
Well, these were original games too, and their physics were developed for one game and at a time.
Got it.
And they were so well refined, and it felt eons better than, it was felt just leagues better than the competition in terms of the physics. And they actually had a Kickstarter where they brought Time Shock back up to speed with new modern games, but they don't really do that anymore. But they were the best. Besides them, Zen Pinball's a little weird. It does feel a little different. But you can try yourself and see what you think. Their new physics engine is in effect in the open beta for Pinball FX 3, the Williams title. So you can get on Steam, you right-click Pinball FX 3 and choose the beta that you want, which is the Williams beta. And you can try Fishtails Unlimited and 3 other games, which are all ready to play.
So I guess I know what you're doing this weekend?
I played it a bit. It's interesting. What I really want is for them to acknowledge that they are working on VR. Because if you could play the originals, if you could play all the 90s Williams games in virtual reality, using the Zen Pinball engine, it looks better, far better than the Pinball Arcade engine, that in VR, dude.
Yeah.
That would be amazing. And when I talk about in VR, I'm talking about using the thing
Sim.
I made, the pin sim, where you can stand at the first 8 inches of a pinball machine with flippers on the side and nudge it and plunge, and you feel like you're at the pinball machine and you can move your head around, because that's the one thing you can't do with virtual pinball. You're in a static lockdown camera. If you play pinball, you're never just standing there. You're moving your head around to get a beat on that ball.
It's not a static lockdown. There's shortcuts to. You got to zoom in on certain areas.
No. It's totally different. You have to move your head to read those physics. Where's that ball going to go?
Yeah.
You can't be a competitive pinball player with locking your head in one position. So that's my hope. And I asked them on Twitter. A lot of people asked them on Twitter, and they did not respond.
Oh.
They responded to somebody on a website that did an interview, and they said, that's a compelling idea, but we don't currently have plans.
Where's the money?
Boo.
They put so much effort with their Pinball FX 2 VR title into putting those pinball games into environments that also exhibit the movies whatever the properties they're based on. Like if you're in Jaws, there's a shark swimming around the pinball machine, or if you're in their medieval themed one, there's the knight is standing behind the game and walks around you. I think that's neat. But if that's what's holding you back from making these 90s Williams games in VR, forget it.
You don't need those extra things.
You do not. You can stand in the same environment they've got going on with the flat screen version and be perfectly happy. Just let me stand in front of that game and feel like I'm there.
Maybe it's a license problem.
That was my question to them, is not, are you making it? I asked, do you have the rights to make it? and they didn't respond. So I hope they do. That would be so good. I hope that comes.
Now it's time for a moment of science.
I want to talk about one of the saddest stories I've heard in science in a long time, and it's the museum in Rio burning down last Friday night. Did you guys hear about this?
No.
A museum of natural history in Rio completely burned to the ground. They lost hundreds of thousands of specimens that had been recorded for a number of years. The museum itself had been sort of facing budget woes as part of a larger sort of budget crisis in that country over the last 10 or so years. And there are, as we start to uncover the source of the fire, there's reports about how they had inadequate wiring and fire protections in place. What I want to emphasize is the types of things that were lost in this fire. There was a 12,000-year-old skull of a human. Wow. That's something obviously cannot be replaced. It had one of the best and most complete invertebrate collections in the entire world. You've heard of pterosaurs before. They had some of the earliest fossils of pterosaurs, so they had a tremendous dinosaur collection that's all gone. There are these stunning photos of people that work at the museum, researchers running into the museum, bits of the museum, while the building is on fire to save as many specimens as possible. Much of their botany collection was saved because it was another building. We won't know the full extent of the damage because obviously not all the specimens are in the fire areas, but as far as we can tell, we lost so much. And I think all you have to do is read the bevy of stories from scientists this week. There are stories in the Atlantic and the New York Times, all written by scientists talking about what a tremendous loss this is. Not because of the loss of history, but the loss of what that means for future science. Because we preserve those specimens not just to remember, but we use them to conduct research as questions emerge over time. So I'm this week going to go visit the Cal Academy of Sciences, which is one of the largest houses of biodiversity in the world. They helped launch one of Darwin's ships back over 100 years ago. So I think we should just remember that these museums of natural history are not just, dusty places with big dinosaur bones in them. They are incredible repositories of science that need to be protected for generations to come. And
they need sprinkler systems, which apparently this museum didn't have.
It did not have. Yeah.
That's really sad.
Yeah.
Thankfully, no one was injured in the fire.
No one was injured in the fire. It happened late at night. I don't believe a cause has been identified at this point. But I just wanted to lament that a little bit. Two other quick stories this week. I did a panel at DragonCon called The Genetics of Genetics, or Genetics, and More Genetics, as like to be called. And we obviously spent a lot of time talking about CRISPR editing of genes. A story came out a couple weeks ago where in China they were actually able to edit embryos that were made with IVF. These are viable human embryos. They did it with a CRISPR technique called base editing, where they legitimately, all those TCAs and Gs, they match them up one by one as they go along, which seems like a really slow process. That's why it's not used very often.
Yep.
But the edit was incredibly successful. One of the worries about CRISPR is that there's a lot of off-target editing. And so previously, when it's been done in sort of human cell lines, it's led to development of cancers because of the off-targets. This seam in 3 of the 6 embryos edited was highly on target, which is a massive advance forward. There's still base editing super slow, and this needs to be taken to the Cas9 technique for it to be really viable. But they use this to edit out something for a disease called Marfan Syndrome, which is a connective tissue disorder, which is deadly. No other way to put it. And so it is fascinating to see this come to light. somebody brought up in that panel, which I think is interesting, is like, we may be on the cusp in a few years, short time, of being able to correct genetic diseases, big ones that have lethality associated to them. And then somebody brought up like, well, what if people don't want that to be fixed? Like if I'm deaf or if I'm, whatever, if I'm able to live with this thing and I don't want to be fixed, like, what do we say about that? I thought that was a fascinating comment that really like pokes at the heart of why it's so important for people to be involved.
Wait, implying that embryos shouldn't have that fixed? Or
yeah. We're making a choice. We're making a value judgment on a person's life.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's stickier than I initially thought, because at first, I mean, going back years ago, I'd be like, yeah, sure. Why wouldn't you fix that?
Yep. And it's value judgment not only on that person's life, but anyone else
Yes, who exists.
Well, I mean, I think I might have a much colder perspective on that. And my feeling is maybe you shouldn't fix it in order to retain survival of the fittest and Darwinism,
I would say that is cold.
Yeah, right.
That's ice cold, man.
And I'm not making that argument, but I could see that. I think that's an interesting argument.
Lastly, I have an uplifting one. I also ran a panel at DragonCon called "Let's Give the Nobel Prize to Fictional People," and the whole reason I pitched doing this panel is the Nobel Prize is kind of fucked up. It has all these rules associated to it that have led to snubs. So one of the rules is like you can't give it posthumously. Only 3 laureates can be awarded a thing for awards. So some big physics thing that involves thousands of scientists, you have to pick 3 people. And so like some of the snubs that have existed over time are like Mahatma Gandhi was nominated 6 times, but one of the judges said he didn't think civil disobedience was something that was going to stick.
Oh, yeah.
Oops. Jonas Salk, who invented the polio vaccine, was criticized as the vaccine isn't going to be remembered. It's the underlying work. Oops. But the one that I really pointed to that is indicative of problems within science is Jocelyn Bell. In the 1960s, she discovered this type of star that was emitting a weird form of radiation. And she discovered a pulsar, this sort of rotating star that emits radiation on a regular basis. It has neutrons in it, and it creates this effect. Like, we've all heard of pulsars. That's just common parlance. The Nobel Prize was awarded for that discovery to her boss. She actually discovered it as a graduate student. It's largely seen as one of the greatest snubs in all of Nobel Prize history. And because the Nobel Prize was awarded for that topic, she can't get a Nobel Prize for it because of the rules. Well, yesterday it was announced that she was being awarded the Breakthrough Prize, which is a $3 million prize that's centered here in Silicon Valley for her efforts. And then she announced, and this is a special prize they created just for her in recognition for her lifetime achievement and all she's done to promote women going into science. And on the heels of that announcement, she announced she was going to take the prize money and establish a scholarship for underrepresented minorities and women in science so that they can pursue a life in physics that she's enjoyed so thoroughly. So shout out to Jocelyn Bell.
Yeah.
And all the people that finally got it right.
The VR Minute. Virtual reality this week.
Now that we're in September, the countdown to Oculus Connect 5, OC5 begins. Excuse me. And already we're seeing some product launches, things that we saw last year at OC5 finally, or OC4 finally coming to release. Windlands 2 has a release date.
Yep.
I'm very excited for this game. This is a multiplayer, co-op multiplayer, like almost like a web slinging, but grappling hook.
Yeah.
Traversing game, and that will be released at the end of this year.
That's right,
In December. On the Oculus Go platform, we have the release of Thumper, which previously was a PSVR release. Makes a lot of sense.
It's also on Rift. It's a fun little game. It's a gamepad game on the Rift, I believe. I'm sure you can play it with the touch controllers.
Yeah.
But it's fun. It's a good little arcade game. You know, you're basically sliding down this fast. It's not a racing game, but it gives you that sense of going fast down a road, and then you have to turn at just the right moment.
Yep.
And it's very space agey and
music. It's like audio surf.
yeah, it's a bit like that. I think it's perfect for the Go. The Go, I'll be curious to see how it looks though.
Lean back.
Because the Go has a limited processor on it. I'm curious to see if they, maintain the level of graphics that they have.
This is exactly the reason I want to see the Tetris game on Oculus Go.
Yeah.
Because it's not about getting closer to it's about being immersed in a space. And that's what I would like.
It's a great game. I mean, it's very simple, but it's a very challenging game. I went through a period where I was playing that every day.
Last week, Apple confirmed or acknowledged that they had bought a Denver-based startup that works in building waveguide lenses. Now, if that word sounds familiar, it's because we've said it a lot recently. It's the lens technology that's in the HoloLens and also the current Magic Leap 1 augmented reality headsets.
Yep.
And it lends credence to Apple working on their own headset, although
Apple glasses confirmed.
that would mean that theirs working on existing technology. What would these waveguides bring to the table that the other ones have not?
Well, if you continue the trajectory of HoloLens to Magic Leap, you would expect them to be bigger, to have a larger projected
Larger
image.
field of view. I mean, there's
Yes,
some
larger field of view.
physical limitations to just the physics limitations of waveguides. Large field of view, things get a little more diffuse. You're going to see more color aberration. You're always going to get a cap on the type of opacity.
Exactly.
So should we just start setting our expectations right now that whatever Apple comes out with, it's probably not going to be whatever Magic Leap had promised 4 years ago?
No, I gotta be honest with you. Just hearing waveguide does not get me excited.
Wow.
It is interesting technology. Like, just from a construction standpoint, I would watch a documentary about the making of waveguides. Is it what I want from AR? Not necessarily. Like,
What if they're more focal planes?
It's not that. It's not that accommodation problem that gets me discouraged about it. It's the opacity problem and the field of view.
And what's not problem? Limitation.
Yeah.
It's inherent opacity and field of view limitations. And they can, I think, I'm not worried about opacity. If they can make field of view feel more immersive and then also build a software and tracking system that brings us the killer app that we haven't had, I'm fine with opacity. I'm fine with living in my lifetime, AR having not fully opaque images.
Yeah.
I accept that.
It's
It's like photorealism. It's fidelity.
and maybe that's just a matter of accepting it, but also using it properly. Like, not trying to create solid objects, but
And not trying to put objects in the world that will take the place
right
of real
Exactly.
objects,
Exactly.
but really do augmenting, living up to the word, enhancing
Or
with digital information.
complementing.
Complementing, sure. Like it's I think it's just like CG and photorealism in video games. It's like at some point work with the style, use artistry and creativity to work with the technology.
It raises concerns about price because optical combiners are so much less expensive to make. Of course,
I'm
it's
so
much
glad they're
much
not
more
going with
bulky.
that.
Like
Yeah.
you can't imagine Apple doing that just from a size standpoint.
Yep.
But everything that we've seen from I guess the only two real manufacturers of these things have shown us that they're very expensive to produce and hard to produce. And so Apple can certainly manage to do it at scale, but that requires a market.
Maybe that's why they bought this company. Maybe the company has a patent, has manufacturing technique, and there are a lot of different ways to make waveguides, and maybe they found a way to do it cheaper. Of course, it'll still cost a lot because that's what they do. On the VR side, Vive has Viveport as their Steam VR competitor, as their platform, and now they're opening up Viveport access to Rift users, much like Steam VR can also be accessed by Rift users.
Great.
About time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
about time.
great. The more the merrier. But I don't know, Viveport. I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, I think
like-
they had a big push initially in the first couple of years with funding some development of some games, some exclusives, but I think it's a losing battle. I think the whole subscription service of paying for access to some of these games on a
They might as well try this,
yeah.
though.
Yeah, it's just not the market they thought, I think, when they originally launched it with all the excitement. Again, that trough of disillusionment. Speaking of the trough of disillusionment and market of VR, or market share for VR, IDC, the research firm, says that VR headset shipments had a sharp decline this last quarter.
Because of decreased demand.
I don't know.
There's also no new like big headset,
Yeah.
right? Of
Well,
course it would decline.
I don't know. Oculus just released their new Marvel branded SKU. Is that a big deal? Maybe not.
I don't know.
I don't know. I mean,
I think- well-
in the community, people are excited about what's coming up. You know, they're excited about Santa Cruz. There's rumblings about the next Rift. We're deep into existing technology.
So I think there are two things to look into this, and I would consider both of these as I can try to bright side or silver lining both of these. One, there's a huge drop in the number of screenless headsets sold, which are garbage headsets. These are the,
Oh, you mean the phone?
the phone holders,
Yeah.
and even the Gear VR, right? This is not where we
Good.
want VR to be headed, right? We want VR to be self-contained, and so we, from 1 million to 1 million fewer, or 500,000 fewer of these screenless headsets sold in this quarter. Fine, take that out. Those are inflated numbers anyway. But for tethered headsets, like for the PSVR and the Oculus and the Rift and the Vive, we had a decline of 37% based on IDC's numbers in the second quarter of 2018, and they say that's largely because the price drops came last year.
Yeah, Christmas. So
Christmas.
like obviously we're in like the hangover from that. I don't think that's a huge deal.
Yeah. HTC, they said shipped 100,000 headsets in the quarter. It's not bad. And the Go standalone VR headsets, of course, grew 400% because of the Oculus Go and the Xiaomi VR.
Did they say how many Go's were sold?
So their number is 200,000.
Total.
200,000 total.
Huh.
Yeah, in the quarter.
I wonder what Oculus was hoping for.
Probably more than that.
All right. Well, that does it for the VR Minute. And I think that does it for this episode.
Oh, okay. You're not talking about the last thing?
One last thing. Baby tech, as my cognitive ability decreases over the next 2 months, my money spent on baby tech will increase. And I've made my big purchase, which is the SNU.
The SNU?
The SNU.
What's that?
What is that? A fully AI enabled parent to take your place?
Almost. At least between the hours of sleeping time. It is a smart bassinet. And it was recommended by a couple people I trust. Very expensive. I found a used one at a really
What
good price.
makes it smart? What does it do?
You wrap the baby, swaddle the baby up, lock them into this bassinet, and when it detects movement, it will emit white noise and start gently rocking the baby back to sleep. And people who've used it said that it will get them on average an extra hour of sleep every night. Which I'm like, if I amortize the price of this thing over however many months, I'll pay that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Let us know how that goes.
I will. And we have an outro this week.
We do. This is from ADC. No, Al Future.
Hi there, I didn't see you.
I'm all in on that game. Oh, when you're a goose. It's a mess. Spawning in behind you. That is the best game.
They have wipes there if you want them.
The heck was that?
It was a high-pitched version of something we talked about, but I don't know what we were talking
All
about.
right. There you go.
There are wipes there. Best version of the game. All right. We'll see you next week. Bye.